Welcome to the last episode of Exodus Examined, where in this episode I will be providing you my theories on what I think happened based on the evidence that I had provided for you in the previous episodes. But before I get into it, I want to make a couple of comments. The first is, if you've watched this series and you feel that your faith has been a little knocked off balance or shaken, always remember the miracles. Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Las Lajas, Our Lady of Zaytun. These are undeniable evidence of God's existence. And they'll always keep you grounded or bring you back to ground. They'll give you a solid foundation. They can edify your faith better than the Bible. Second, some people take the Bible for its literal sense. It's a fundamentalist belief that God dictated to Moses or to the authors of the Bible. These people have problems when they are confronted with facts or evidence or knowledge or sciences such as Egyptology that disproves their belief. But rather than adjust their belief or question it, they get mad at the evidence or the fact or the knowledge or the person presenting the evidence to them. For example, the Bible says there were 600,000 men that were in the Exodus, and it didn't include their women and children, so they believe that there was over 1.2 million people involved in the Exodus. But an Egyptologist can come to them and says, well, wait a minute, the population of Egypt at the time was only 1 million, so that can't possibly be true. And they blame the Egyptologist, call him an atheist. But doesn't it make more sense for these people to look inwardly and perhaps start questioning their beliefs? Who convinced them to believe in such an outdated doctrine from the Renaissance, that God dictated the words of the Bible to the authors? Our knowledge as humans has surpassed that doctrine. We know that the world is not 4,700 years old. Wouldn't it be wiser to do some self-reflection, such as, who bamboozled me into believing that an old guy could build a boat half the size of the Titanic that would hold every single species on the planet? And never mind all the complications are surrounding that story, such as, how did you feed them for 8 days, and region-specific animals such as polar bears or North American black bears, bison, buffalo, all the species located in the Amazon jungle, koala bears. How did those animals get to Noah's boat? Who's at fault? The person who questions that children's story, or the person who believes it? Or perhaps even the person that convinced that person to believe that story. Last couple comments before I get into my theories. It's a philosophical question on, what do you suppose God thinks about humans' quest for knowledge? What does God think about the science of Egyptology, or the sciences in general? Is he angered when humans find out knowledge or facts that disprove claims that are made in the Bible, such as the book of Exodus? Does he want us to just be naive and kind of stupid and just follow blindly? There's a saying that says, faith should never be assumed. It should be tested. And I say, what's more valuable to God? An educated person who has faith, or the village idiot who follows blindly? Okay, let me get to my theories, or theory. And remember, just a theory. This is my opinion. You can have your own opinion. It's fine. This is based on the evidence that we had talked about. So, I believe there was a tribe led by a guy named Israel that was located somewhere in the Middle East, not in Egypt, but Canaan, somewhere around there. And due to famine, they did have to go to Egypt to find food. In Egypt, in order to get food, the Egyptians would have made them work for their food. And this is where slavery comes in, or work. Either way, the Egyptians would not have given their food away for free. While working, they probably did multiply, but nothing near the numbers that are given in the Bible. I'm thinking like the tribe had maybe 60 to 70 people in it when Moses comes along. So they would have they would have multiplied. And perhaps one of the overseers, not the Pharaoh, would have said, look, your numbers are getting up there with babies, and you're using all our food, so cut the babies off or we're going to kill them. That seems like that definitely could have happened, that the numbers, you can't just keep multiplying these children that aren't working, and it probably would have been a drag on the food system. But I believe there would have been some type of overseer for these people who were working for their food. That overseer would be someone in the bureaucracy of the Egyptian government. He is what I would believe would be in the Pharaoh's position. He wouldn't have been, the Bible says it was the Pharaoh. I believe it was some type of overseer for these people who were working for their food in Egypt, I'm sorry. Now, when it comes to Moses, I believe Moses was a real person. I'm just not convinced that he was 100% Hebrew or Israelite. I think it seems more likely that his mother was Israelite while his father was Egyptian, or this overseer, which would explain why he got the name Moses. He was probably named. This overseer would most likely have sex with many of the slaves. Maybe Moses' mother was a favorite, and Moses probably was raised pretty well, but I believe he had an Egyptian father. Over time, I think the father-son relationship would have eroded, seeing as though the mother was probably treated pretty poorly. There would have been some animosity between the father and the son, perhaps, and that's why Moses started to get a guilty conscience for his mother and his mother's people, and that's when he bolted out of Egypt. I think guilt, whether he saw the burning bush or not, I think guilt would have made him come back for the people. When it comes to the 10 plagues, I think that happened, but on a much, much smaller scale in a village or a small town. Wherever these people were working for their food and they had some overseers beating them to death or whatever, I think the plagues could happen on a much smaller scale. They also say that the Nile did turn red every year due to that inundation that I talked about. So that part did happen. The last plague, the angel of death, yes, I believe that happened. However, I want you to think about this possibility. Just think about it, because it could be that Moses and his brother Aaron and maybe one or two other guys went through the Egyptian houses and killed them all in their sleep in that night, that Passover night. And obviously the blood on the door would tell Moses and his group of assassins, you know, this is where we live, don't kill us. And then after they went through and murdered all the Egyptians, I mean, when it comes to Moses, we know he has the capacity to kill without remorse, because when he kills the soldier or the taskmaster in the story, he didn't leave Egypt because he had remorse. He left because he thought he was going to get caught. So Moses has the capacity to kill. So you could see that scenario happen, him and a couple of his buddies going through the houses killing. After they killed everyone, they gathered everyone together, and that's when they bolted out of Egypt. When it comes to Moses separating the Red Sea, I don't believe that story happened. So there you have it. I'd love to know what your theory is, if you have one, and I'd love to know your opinion. So thank you very much for watching this series. I hope you had as much fun as I did.